Alright, we're going to look at solving quadratics and also graphing quadratics, kind of in review for a standardized test such as the CST or the STAR. On the STAR and CST, of course, it's all multiple choice, but I believe that a lot of these questions you need to be able to solve straightforward and then pick the answer rather than trying to back solve. So when you have a quadratic and you need to solve it, the first thing is that finding the solutions, which means solving for x, is the same as finding the zeros, which is the same as finding the roots, which is the same as finding the x-intercepts. One of the tricks is that when you read a question, it won't just say solve this quadratic. It might say find the zeros of this, find the roots, find the x-intercepts, where is it that the graph crosses the x-axis. All of those types of wording of questions refer to the same thing that we're going to do, and we're going to just solve for x when y is equal to 0. So the first way that you can try to solve is by factoring. Not all quadratics are factorable, but if you can find out the factorization quickly, then you should be in good shape. So this quadratic is actually factorable, and when a quadratic is factorable, you can you can find the two binomials that are factors of it. And so you start off by trying to find out the first terms in these binomials, and it would be the only thing that can be multiplied together to give me 2x squared is 2x times x. The second thing is you need to find your last terms, and so the last terms are going to be the outside term times the inside term. That's going to give the middle term. So the only thing that can be multiplied together to give me -5 is +5 and -1. But in a certain order, when I multiply the outside and the inside, then add them, I'm going to get a +9x. This is the correct factorization. So the next thing you need to do is you need to use your zero product property, which means that I'm going to set this binomial equal to 0, and I'm going to set this binomial equal to 0. And when I do that, I can solve each of these equations for x and come out with a solution. So I'm going to do some simple adding to both sides, then divide, and you get x is 1/2. Over here, subtracting 5, you get x is equal to -5. So another thing about the CST or the STAR is that a lot of times the answers might be written differently. Sometimes the answers might be that x is equal to. Sometimes it may appear as a solution set. So just be familiar with both ways so you can identify the correct answer. Go ahead and do 21, 24, and 26. Try to realize that you're trying to find basically all the same thing as what you're doing is you're trying to solve for x. Believe all of them are factorable. Make sure that you make y is equal to 0 and solve by factoring. Go ahead and hit pause and do that, and we'll come back and do the quadratic formula. Alright, so the next way to solve is by the quadratic formula. In the quadratic formula, you may have heard a song or some kind of story that would tell you what the formula is or how to remember the formula. That's fine. But specifically, it's this formula, and the A's, B's, and C's may be unfamiliar to you. What the A refers to is it's going to be the coefficient of the x squared, and the B is going to be the coefficient of the linear term or the x term, and the C is going to be the constant. So you can substitute these numbers into the formula, and then you can simplify the formula. Now, as I'm doing this, I'd like to comment that the quadratic formula, I think, is the best way to get the answer, because not all quadratics are factorable, and a lot of students will waste their time trying to factor something that can't be factored, spend 5 or 10 minutes on it, and not be able to arrive at a correct solution. So you can always use the quadratic formula. It just may take a little bit longer. All right, so we got this, and now we just need to simplify it, so try to follow along as I quickly simplify it. Minus times a minus is going to give me a plus, and 2 times 2 on the bottom is going to give me a 4. If you simplify it even more, you're going to see you got a perfect square underneath the square root. Okay, now when we get to this point, you got to realize we have two solutions. We have negative 9 plus 11 over 4 and negative 9 minus 11 over 4. And those are the way I'm going to get these two answers. So when we get negative 9 plus 11, we get 2 over 4, which is 1/2. And negative 9 minus 11 is going to be negative 20 over 4, which is negative 5. So that's how I can arrive at my same two solutions for the same quadratic, but doing it a different method. Go ahead and do the next 3 on this sheet, and you'll have to use the quadratic formula, but please understand, again, the way that you can solve any quadratic is by factoring or by the quadratic formula, and the words might all be different, but the concept is the same. Go ahead and pause and work those out, and then we'll look at the back. All right, so our focus now is about graphing quadratics, and so you need to understand that when you look at a standardized test, you're going to look at a graph and try to match it to an equation, or look at an equation, try to match it to a graph. So you need to know how to recognize which equation goes with which graph. One of the good things about parabolas is that if it opens upward, then A, as I spoke of on the quadratic formula, is positive, and if it opens down, then A is going to be negative. So that's a quick way that you can eliminate some choices. If you have a graph that goes up and your A is negative for one of the choices, you can cross it out. Second thing is the vertex. The vertex is going to be where the line changes from going downwards to going upwards, or if it's upside down, it's going to go up and then down. So that's the vertex, and you can find the vertex by using some algebra or by locating it. Also, the place where the line crosses the x-axis is going to be called the x-intercept. So if you can find the x-intercepts on your graph and verify those on your equation, then you can quickly eliminate the choices. So to find the vertex, the formula is going to be x equals negative b over 2a. And so just like we talked about on the quadratic formula, a and b are the same parts, coefficients of the x squared and the x. And once you find what x is equal to, you're going to substitute that back into the equation and find the y value for that. So if we look at x squared plus 6x plus 8 is equal to y from this side over here, we can find out the x value of the vertex. And the x value of the vertex is going to be negative 3. And we're going to plug that negative 3 in for x, and we're going to find the y value. And then so when x is negative 3, then y is negative 1. And that would be your vertex for your graph. So how this will help you is if you have an equation, you can quickly find the vertex and then look at the pictures for the graph and figure out which graph does not have negative 3, negative 1 for the vertex. You can cross that choice off, and then you're good to go. Okay, the tips for most of the graphing problems are, again, what I was just speaking about. If you can find the x-intercepts, and how do you do that? You find the solution. You solve for x. You find the zeros, the roots, just like we did on the previous side. The x-intercepts are where the line crosses the x-axis, so we know here on this one the x-intercepts are going to be 1, 2, 3, 0, and negative 1, 0, or x equals 3, x equals negative 1. If you can solve your quadratic and get that, then you know that this is the graph that matches that equation. Another tip is that A being positive, the graph will go up. If A is negative, the graph goes down. We didn't learn any types that go from side to side. So if you have a side-to-side parabola, then you can cross it off because it's not going to be one of the ones that we study. And one of the last biggest tips is be able to find the vertex, because usually the vertex is different for all the graphs. And so if you can locate the point that's the vertex and then find the vertex using algebra, try to match those up, and then you got your correct answer. So with that in mind, go ahead and do the rest of these. We already did the vertex for number 27, but you need to graph number 28. You'll need to find out some of these important things in order to solve multiple choice question, and then also again match up the vertex or the x-intercepts to get the last